Hi guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, I want to make it about money. Money is one of the things that makes the world go round, and when we don't have it, it can really cause a lot of stress. And so the first real issue, like we grew up thinking we never had enough money. In reality, looking back, I'm like, we had tons of toys. We didn't have the right nutrition. So I think that would be one thing, is like focusing less on refined carbs and more on healthy fruits and vegetables and proteins. And there was a lot of treats that were cheap, but that were treats, right? And so I can see the same pattern in my life where I really thought I was focusing really good on like feeding my kids healthy meals, but then we would have like, I like to cook in my free time, bake things, like I like to bake things, and we like treats. And that would really remove any sort of the nutrition that we had eaten, I feel, because I think looking back, like what I thought was a balanced nutritional system was actually not. And then it might have been okay, but when you're experiencing high levels of stress and abuse, and your system is overworked and you're overworked, then those deficits really become more apparent. And just like in your money, when stress happens, when abuse happens, you think you're safe and secure with your money that you're making, and then you realize, like, just in the way the world currently, like, things can quickly move out of balance. And so when I was in the 9 to 5, I thought I'm going to work this. I was going to be a Canada Post worker until I retired. That was the idea. I was like, I felt pretty confident and secure. In reality, not only was when I was in the job, I started to realize the job was taking its toll on my body. And like, it's great exercise, but exercise in excess moderation, excuse me, is now wear and tear on your body. And so you don't get paid for that. They don't pay you for that. And then I also realized, like, in order to not get so tired and keep my body in full repair, like, it takes a lot of nutrients and food. So I wasn't snacking on fillers, right? And so like that, you don't account into that job. And so it's not just about like how your life is affecting your finances and your health, but it's also like that job that you deem to be high paying. Is it really high paying when you really start adding and calculating? So like I had, as a letter carrier, they paid for some of our shoes, like we got like an allowance, but it wouldn't cover high quality gloves to make sure we didn't get frostbite on those cold days. It didn't cover replacement shoes, and it didn't cover all the costs of the wear and tear that is going to happen on that job. It also, like I spoke about nutritional wise, like I was supplementing with carbs, but like unhealthy carbs at times too, right? So to try to focus on buying all those high end, which are high cost, like nutritional items, like that job wasn't really paying any different than other jobs. And especially like if I have to, like the things that I liked about it, in order to access those things, like when you finish the job, you could go home with a full day's pay, right? So to me, as a single mom, I was trying to like race through the job, keep my clients happy and do the job, but also try to get home sooner, right? And so by doing that, I would have to overpack my body with, in order to get out earlier, instead of waiting for my bags to be delivered to that first box where I would pick up like you would have a carry out, and then you would meet that first box. And if you beat the drop-off person to that box, you'd be waiting, right? So to me, if I could carry more, I could get more done and I could leave sooner. And so to me, that was working smart, not hard. And then I would be able to get paid for a full day. Well, I was actually at home maybe by, when I start at 8, I could be home at like 1 or 2, and then I could kind of relax from overworking. But then also it would count as resting from my work, but getting a break between when the kids were coming home. And so it seemed like a plan that worked, but it wasn't working, And same with like the wage was high, but when you account for the cost of the job, it seemed to kind of deteriorate. And over a long period of time, it was not something that I could be in consistently. Not only that, like I love being outside. I love the exercise when it happened as exercise and it wasn't overwork. But it really left me lacking. Like I didn't feel like I had a lot of purpose. I was literally doing, like, you don't need any sort of skill set except, well, you need some skill set to be a letter carrier. You need to be able to be resilient. and tolerant and endure. And so that is important. But mentally, like, you just, it's pretty cut and dry. You just take the mail, read the address, and show up. And you have to be able to sort it. But they've already put the case there. They've already put some sort of plan into how to pull that case per the route. Now, sometimes it's messed up, but as you get good, you can kind of revise that, save time, whatever. But what was happening within that corporation was they were finding ways to pay us less and get us to do more. And you can take longer on the job and collect overtime for that. Like, if you do want to take your time, if you want to be consistent and walk at a moderate pace, they'll allow that for so long as they see some sort of value in it. So it's not about you and your pace. It's more like, okay, are they getting their route done? Plus, are they doing overtime? Like, it's almost they'll allow you to do it until they won't. And so also for me as a single mom, like, if I were to take time past, like, say my shift is like 8 to 4, now if I'm taking my time and I'm now at 6, my kids are now home because the dad and my family weren't involved. So, like, I'm the one responsible for feeding those kids. And I also had kids because I wanted to spend time with my kids. And so some of these jobs that are high paying have you working long hours, and you think, like, I'm getting paid, but, like, how much are the taxes taking? And taxes are going to come. Like, no matter if you can't just say, I don't want to make a lot of money because the taxes are going to be taken. That's not where I'm going with. But you have to understand, like, when you look at the full deck, the full picture, what are you getting from this? And are you getting something? Is it fulfilling? Is it leading to a healthy lifestyle? What are you actually, or is it just breaking you down? And you can look at relationships like this too. Is it worth the problems that happen? Like, is this abuse, or are these, like, mistakes? Are we improving, or are we just maintaining a level of tolerating a dysfunctional dynamic, whether it be a person or a position, right? And so there are times when the kid's father, when my first real issue, like, you know, I knew as a kid, like, my friends would have things that we didn't have, and we would want what they have. And sometimes my dad would get us, like, I remember those it's not a pogo stick, but it's like those, it had like a round disc, and it had a balloon through it. And so you put your feet on either side of that balloon that popped out the top, and then you'd hop on the balloon that was on the bottom. And I remember our friends had gone that, we really wanted one. And then, you know, he didn't give in to us, but then he later came home with one. And so, like, we felt like we were like the neighborhood kids over there that, you know, had a lot. You know, we didn't go on a lot of high-end vacations, but I do remember, and I've seen pictures, I don't remember, but I've seen the pictures where we went on a lot of vacations far away and stuff, but they're more like the interests of my dad, more not really like kid-friendly trips. And we did go on some kid-friendly trips. We went to Canada's Wonderland. That's kid-friendly, but and so we had stuff, but for some reason, and I don't know where that comparison came from, because I know, like, you see, like, your friends have it, but, like, you can share your stuff with your friends. So I don't really understand. I think there's more to that situation. And it's not about being entitled either. Like, I think we had a lot. I don't know where we got that idea that we didn't have enough. And I do feel like it's my dad that really messaged that with us, and not being grateful for what he had, but also, like, if you want more, then go get it. And I just don't think, I think that could have been his intention, but I just don't think he knew how to go after it and develop that, right? With a lack of growth. And so, like, for the first real time I had, like, so when I had kids with the kid's dad, like, we lived in an apartment. It was really small, and it was unfinished and dirty, and it wasn't great. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best. It served its purpose, but it wasn't like a warm home, right? It was a shelter. It sheltered us, and it did what we needed it to do. And so we wanted something more. So we bought our final home as our first home. And so that was a huge mistake because we couldn't afford it. He needed to ask his boss to help us with the loan. And so already we were, like, jumping too far ahead of our finances. So that's one thing, is sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And it's like, you have this idea of what you want for your family, but when you realize, like, when we got that big house, it had, like, just under an acre of yard that needed to be maintained and cut. And then it had other stuff and repairs. And you just think, like, in an apartment, we live there, and you don't have to be responsible for the repairs. We didn't paint because I don't know why we didn't paint. Like, we could have added things, but I just don't think we had the money. So if we didn't have the money for, you know, to fix the apartment, why would we have the money to fix this bigger ass house, right? And so then when we broke up, like now we separated and we had to sell that house, which we made 20 grand on each, even though I made us 40,000 is a more accurate way of saying it. And so I could take my 20 and he took his 20. The kid's dad didn't do anything to buy for any sort of security or fund. He blew his 20. And I reinvested my 20 into my next home with my kids, which was quite a bit smaller than that original home. And so at the time, that was a little bit scary, but I thought I have my Canada Post job, which feels secure, so I should be okay. And then I also had the kids, the child support that I was supposed to be receiving. We had an agreement in place, and so I was like, I felt safe and secure. I'm like, he's got to pay this. It's through the court system. I thought they're going to uphold this. We're good to go. And then I can't remember the exact time, but like he texted me to tell me that he had lost his job, and he was a drinker. He tended to not, when I was with him, he would not show up to work after drinking. He didn't feel the need to call. We had conversations about this. This is who he was. This is what he did. That's what happened. And so at a time where I hadn't yet moved into our own house, but all the paperwork was finalized, this scared the shit out of me, because for me, I could afford the house and what I thought like the expense of living, but like his money was meant to be like sort of that cushion, that for the fun money, right? And I just never expected him to go that far, like to really go that far. There's things where like you don't expect things to happen because you're just like, you don't know what you don't know. But then there's things that you don't expect, like people will do, where you're just like, okay, bro, like how many times can you not show up to work and expect them to tolerate that? Like he thought because he had a sort of a position where he had more experience with the animals, that they wouldn't let him go because of that. So he kind of felt entitled to that position and would just kind of do whatever he wanted and show up whenever he wanted, and thought because I do the stuff that other people can't do or don't want to do or don't have the knowledge to do, that I will never be let go. And he got let go. And so because he would be called in for his experience to other areas, like he worked with swine, and so he went to Russia to help train them and like put together their, like how they did things at his workplace. So he would show them, this is what we do, this is how we have our setup. He got paid to do that. And then he also worked with another man in the arena where like they had him with training. So supposedly like he had a skill set in working with these animals. Like he wanted something more than that, but he did have a gift. But I think with that gift, he felt entitled to that position, and it got to a point where, you know what, you're a worker too, and we pay you to show up, and if you're not showing up, we're not going to pay you. And so that really shocked me that he put that, it showed me he didn't take his kids seriously in that way, because it wasn't like he was being abused. He was being paid, and I can understand not being happy in that environment. And we had talked about him taking school, but he never wanted to do it. I encouraged him to do that. I think if you want to educate yourself, that's going to make our position more secure, and that's a great thing to do. More education is better, right? But he never followed through with it. And I do believe he said he had dyslexia. So that would make that more challenging for him, but not impossible, right? We all have to overcome our weaknesses or perceived weaknesses, right? And so for me, it's like, for whatever he was experiencing, like, because I was experiencing stuff too. I was the one that was primarily caring for our kids. And for our kids, like, he might feed them some stuff, but like, there's very like, it was really making a low effort in the care that he gave to our kids, and in the way that he showed up. Like, his time was very minimal. It was very breadcrumby I was expected to really take care of the children. And if he showed up and if he had, energy and time, he might, like, hang out with them and play with them, but he really did not, he did not have the father role with the kids. And it's unfortunate because like he's supposed to be the provider, right? So even if in that time he believed I was the one who was meant to care for the children, where was his provider mentality in that he's meant to maintain a money amount to financially provide for his kids? So that wasn't there either. And that's a problem. I've dealt with a lot of men who, like, they want the milk for free, they want the family, they want the home, but they're not willing to do the work to maintain and do the home. And he wants a higher education to get a higher paid position. He wants that position, but he's not willing to do the work to get there. And I've experienced a lot of men like this, but I've also experienced a lot of women like this. And so what that did was put me in like a really I don't want to use the word poverty because I still had a home. I still had we still had lots. So that's not poverty, but that is financial abuse where I don't know how to make money on my own, and I thought that what I contracted myself into was fair based on the idea that he was going to do his job and be responsible and accountable and show up and continue doing that, and if it something did fall through, he would find a way to get back into it, right? Like things happen, I expect that, but like he was actually trying to get approved for free education through the second careers, and you had to fill out the forms. And I know this because I've had to fill out the forms, and while it was challenging for me after in the state that I was in, he was not in that state. He had not been through what I'd been through, and so I still put myself through that. And the problem was I had to withdraw myself from that program because of my mental trauma and PTSD that I had experienced through workplaces, in regards to my finances. He has not had that. He had not been through that. While he could have been through trauma in his childhood, I understand his father was abusive physically. He was an alcoholic, and so I understand the challenges that come with that. But I had my stuff too, and I was still showing up too, right? And so he chose to not make a living knowing that he was required and responsible for paying child support. He did not discuss that with me. It wasn't like hey, would this work? I'd like to get an education. Can we work this out some way? That wasn't what the conversation was. He just did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it, not considering now you're putting, not only was I caring for the kids for the most part, he cared for them Wednesdays after work, and overnight, I think what it was, and then every other weekend. And remember, when he's caring for them, it's minimal. It's not home cooked meals. It's very lackluster, basic. It's not caring. It's babysitting, if that. And even babysitters do more than he did. It really was the kids were with him, but he was not with the kids, if that makes sense, right? And so I took care of getting their bikes, buying their bikes, things like that. I took care of their clubs because our duty counselor had not included in our contract that he was responsible for paying for 50% of clubs and extracurricular activities. But I wanted that for my kids because I didn't have that, and I thought it was important to have swimming lessons, play sports, have that physical activity, be around other kids, and I thought that was important to add to their life. He did not pay for those things. After we moved out, he did not. He might contribute once in a while, but it was very rare. From my memory, I would be surprised if he paid for anything. I don't like to be an extreme and exaggerate, but in reality, I remember keeping the receipts in hopes that I could somehow get the duty council to change our contract, but you need to find someone to serve them. And at that time, I didn't have the focus to be able to find him. And looking back now, I think I might have been able to find his address if I could find the courts where his fro cases were being held. And I did know where they were at, but I didn't know if I could find his address because I know when you call and ask for their address, they don't give that information out due to privacy. But I think if you look, you might be able to find it, but I can't be for certain. And to be honest, I still have to try to find him. And remember, at this time, I'm still caring 100% for the kids, for the cost. I'm in over my head financially, but I'm also trying to keep my kids' life from having too much wiggle room from what we came from, because the idea is to keep them consistent and things balanced and safe and secure by not having too much change. And we did just move houses. That's already moving is a huge stress. My kids also had to move their schools, and that was a huge stress on them. I didn't think of it at the time because I'm just thinking moving. I'm just trying to do and get things done, and not really. I wasn't in the headspace to check in on them emotionally, and that's one of my regrets. Is I realized, okay, we still have the food, we got a home, we got the basics, but I wasn't able to check in on them emotionally, and that is because of the situation their father put me in. So that is abusive as well. That's putting me in a state of stress and shock and loss based on his actions now affects me and my kids. And that first time really sent me. I remember being frozen, but still moving, because I'm I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And there's also a sense of humiliation too, because I felt fine, and I thought I could manage my what I had going if I did have him providing what he was responsible and legally required to do. I thought, what, I didn't know how to manage money at the time, but I did. What I wanted was this really, really small home smaller than this house, and the setup was not very practical. And so I'm like, I'm trying to get the basement finished so my kids have an area to run around and play, because we need play, and so I can play with them because I enjoy playing. We used to play hand hockey when we were younger, and we did this. My brother used to do this at Christmas, which I enjoyed that he brought that and reminded us of doing that. And so I love playing games. We did have like little hockey nets and things. We had a foosball table, and the basement was a big, large room. I kept it large, so we just had running room, right? And I had to go into debt to get that done, but I was doing it myself. Like, I did the electrical, I did the framing, I did the insulating and the drywall and the mudding and the painting and the pot lights and everything. Now, I did have some help from a man who, I didn't like putting my hands up in creepy, spidery areas. And there was a cellar room there, and it made the basement kind of extra spidery. And so he put up these boards in a space that was like creepy and crawly, and he screwed those in. And the ex-Todd, he cut away, this sounds so weird saying it, he cut away some metal from a duct or something, I think what it was. Like, it was very, you know, when you have to say those things, it seems like such nothing, but I also like to give people their credit, but at the same time, like, out of, anyways. So that was the first real kind of like, moving and selling the house was a huge deal, because I was really under pressure financially there. And then also, now I'm entirely responsible. Even though I was paying the bills at the house, I don't think he was even paying the mortgage yet. I think I was paying the mortgage. And my dad actually came to stay with me there, and so he was help paying the mortgage as well. So that timing helped, but at the same time, we weren't winning together either, right? There's a lot of shit going on there too. And this is when I was getting along with my dad, or trying to. I was making effort, he was not. And so now I'm in my own house in London, closer to work, which was helpful, because at one point I was having to drive from where I lived in Culloden to London, and that was 45 minutes, but I had to drop the kids off in Culloden so they could still go to their school, and then I had to try to get to my new route on time. And as a relief carrier, you just get assigned a route for a determined amount of time, and then that's how long you do the route for. So it could be daily, it could be for a week, it could be for a month. Like, I was a relief carrier at that time, and so that was a lot that I was having to carry at the time, while the dad was nowhere to be found, not calling, not keeping around. At this point, he was gone. And so that was a lot for me to take on, because not only am I trying to move to a different city and start at a new location, and then the kids I'm trying to like manage like changing their schools, getting them some sort of daycare. Now, they were old enough at this time, I didn't have to put them in daycare, and it was they were able to stay home during the school year. During the summer hours, I had to pay for care, and as I got older, where I'd moved, it actually turned out that they had daycare that was free during the day. And so they were at the age, I think they were like 8 and 9, and there were two of them together, and that's what we talked about. You got to stay together, because we talked about stranger danger and the dangers of, like, you guys can still, like, there are predators in the area, right? So we had conversations, they stayed close, and that's what I had to do. Because remember, also, because I was working for Canada Post, I did not make I made too much to receive any sort of daycare subsidies. So even if I got, like, I could get a daycare position, there's no way I could afford the daycare. And this man was not helping me with daycare. He was not even answering his phone. So, like, I just had to figure things out, right? And so I thought the kids could be home safe. I told them things that they could and couldn't do, operate while they're in the home, kind of thing. So, like, I would try to get them breakfast before I left. And I would talk to them about chewing carefully. We're not jumping around, because, like, I didn't want them to choke when I was not there. This is not ideal. It's the best thing I could do at the time. One time I came home and Alex was playing with my waxing kit, and she had burned herself, and she had got it on Max, our dog, and so she's trying to get that off. And that was a time that was really scary for me. And so, like, I had to talk to her about, like, I just didn't think. You just don't think, right? You think about all the things, but there's always gonna be something. You can't prepare for everything. And so this is really stressful for me and the kids. And so I remember, like, really being scared stiff. And so I've had, okay, what after that? I had another situation where, okay, so I had to move there. there's a time when I moved from there to a condo, and then when I moved from the condo to here, that was really scary because, well, prices of houses had gone up. I bought my condo for like, I think it was $120,000, and then I sold it for $254,000, and then I had to buy this place for $300,000. And so that was still on the up. Like, I still had a little money after I sold the home when I moved here, and I was still working for Canada Post, but I was starting to get seeds of ideas of where I wanted to be able to work from my home. And this is also when I was getting into spirituality in 20, I would say, I moved there in I think I moved here in 2019. And so it was 2018 where I'd gotten more spiritual and started playing more with cards and things like that. And so I was still involved with Todd on and off as a situationship. And so we would talk once in a while, but I was still at the workplace, so I'd see him there, but he'd done some really shitty shit, so we weren't really engaging as much as we used to. And I was being civil if I saw him, but I wasn't like, we weren't in much contact. It's very far and few between. And so I'm in this home. I decided to quit my job, but I found out, like, I can take my pension, and some of it is locked in, and some of it is I can cash out. And so I thought, that's a good amount of money, is $120,000 I had to live off of for what I considered. I'm like, I should be able to get this business up and running in 2 years, right? Because I was already reading for a group already spiritually, right? Pulling cards and stuff like that. But I hadn't received any pay, but I was taking on and getting experience for free, which sucked, but it is what it is. And so I felt really safe and secure with that amount of money, thinking I could make this business happen. But what was happening was, instead of working on my business, I was really tired and I was resting. And there are things about my home that were coming up that were like, the basement is unfinished, and I thought by insulating it and framing it, it would also add to my space, because we were feeling the crunch between the three of us as well. And I thought having more space would be helpful, having an extra bathroom would be helpful. And not necessarily with a shower, but just a toilet and a sink. And I thought maybe that would give my son a space down there that he could live in and have some more room. Because I also was looking at trying to build a side hustle in one of the rooms up here. And downstairs it was unfinished, but the kids didn't seem to mind. Like, they're like, having a larger room seemed to be more than having a finished room. But for me, like, the house is still cold. And so kids don't feel the cold, I guess. I don't know. We moved rooms a lot because it was fun at first, and then it wasn't. And then they realized being down in the basement is kind of creepy, and so we had to move them back up here. And it got to the point where the kids were older and they were moving out because it wasn't working well here, and I felt they needed some outside experience. And that's just how we went. And so it was at the end of 2021 where I realized I was running out of money. I had spent money on renovations with the wrong people. They didn't do the work right. I'm gonna do a house tour today to show you what's going on down there. And so I really started to feel that oh my God, what's going on? Like, when the 120,000 was there, I felt quite relaxed, and I know I needed to take some vacation time off. Because I had been, like, as a single parent, I had been ran through in a way that I just had no energy left, because I was trying to do a 2-person job as one person. And also, I'd been giving my energy to the wrong men, and some of my resources and energy was going towards them too, and like with nothing in return. So when you're expending all this and you're not accumulating any of it, that leaves you burnt out and financially struggling. And and the thing is, I was giving to this man that I thought, like, he would eventually grow into that man. And just as I was growing and learning, I thought he would be too, but I wasn't seeing the signs, and I was avoiding the red flags. Because I wanted a partner that I could work with, and I thought, if all men are kind of like this, then he's better than that. It's like, he's the same as my father, but at least he's friendlier, and that's kind of what I thought. All men are like this, so at least this one's friendlier than this one. And so I was settling, but not, because this man he wanted a wife without the responsibilities of a husband. He liked that he could show up whenever he wanted and leave whenever he wanted and get what he wanted, that you give to your husband in intimacy. He wanted that, but he didn't give that. He didn't give trust, loyalty. He was out there running the streets with all these women and things like that. And so that emotional side effect, response, was also weighing heavily on me. And so all these things were still like on me, and I'm like, so tired and exhausted, and I'm like, why isn't my business working? And I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to manage my money, and I realized I had so many people in my life, and like this really got me stuck. So like I'm all of a sudden now I'm thinking that I was gonna go from my 9 to 5 to creating a business, and I thought 2 years would be enough, but it wasn't. And so now I had to go get a job, and I had to start at minimum wage when my other job was around $26-27 an hour. Like that's a big hit to take, to have to go not only back in the work world doing a job you hate. Like I didn't mind my job as a worker, as a kind of post worker, but it was hard on me. I did come home exhausted and depleted, and there were days like around Christmas where you may get tips from the customers, but you don't get extra pay unless you take extra hours for the extra parcels. And while yes, they would heavily come in and help with some of the parcels, it's obvious like there's a higher volume of mail that you're carrying on your body now, right? And then the flyers you get paid peanuts for, but the weight is there and the work is there. And the flyers you get paid 2 cents per flyer. That's including like collating and delivering and carrying it, right? It's just not a win. And so now going back, and I got a job at a local like weed warehouse for minimum wage, and it was like 10 hours standing on cement. There were limited chairs, even though they could have bought more. They decided not to. They didn't want us sitting. We could sit somewhat, but like there wasn't enough for everybody to sit. And like there was like a manager there that was really like on you. Keep going, don't stop. And I'm like, dude, I'm making fucking minimum wage, and you're like literally back there with a metaphoric like whip, just it's just weird, because it's like it's just weird, the expectation versus like the pay. And that manager was really abusive as well, and it got to the point where I just left, because I was like, I don't know what to do, but I can't stay here. And I think I still had some money, I think, on my like left in my bank account, so I still had some wiggle room. And then I got into, I'm trying to think, where did I go from there? I think I might have, I can't remember all the places, but I did get a job at this car place. I can't remember, it started with a B, and it was in Ingersoll. That was a temporary job for 4 months. I think that's the next job I got. And then I left early because one night my dog was like literally just like throwing up blood. Like, I'm like, that is way too much blood for your small body to be losing. And I had to sit with him. And then by the time it was time to go back to work after a few days, I just realized it wasn't really worth it for me to go back, and I didn't really want to. And the term was almost up anyways, and so I still could afford to do that. And then the next job I got was at Furtenboyer Knock, and I worked there for 2 years. And that was a narcissist playground in reality. And I'm going to do some videos about that as well. But like when I got there, like I was making $26-27 an hour. And the only problem I had was I thought it was great, but they required me to work 3 out of 4 Saturdays, mandatory overtime. And with the people that I was working and the environment the way it was, like it was extremely unorganized and not updated in a lot of ways, but updated in many other ways, which is conflicting. It's like you could see they wanted to improve some things, but they didn't care about other things. And so like being in that environment, just exhausting. And then the 6 days, exhausting. And then, so I was trying to work on my carnivore diet, like my health through carnivore diet and stuff like that. Because I'm like, I got to do something different to be able to have time and energy for my side hustle. And it's at that time where I let those people know. I thought leading by example, maybe that would help. And I thought I was developing new friendships and connections. And even if it wasn't like for outside of work, I thought these people can benefit from what I've learned in life. And I shared my my YouTube channel there. And then like, that's why I stopped it at times, because I didn't want them to be in it. And I felt like I couldn't share what I really wanted to share with them watching, especially when I had to go to work with them on a regular. And it got to a point where this man would not stop touching me there. And so when I finally stood up and advocated for myself, management and HR were gaslighting. They backed the predator. They were very biased. They're very male-centered minded in a way that like, well, we don't believe you kind of thing. And even though I had evidence, I had a witness, even though he wasn't on my side, he did acknowledge that what I was saying was true about this man not touching or wouldn't stop touching me. And he had conversations to this man about it. where this man admitted that he had trouble not touching me, and still the management did nothing. And they did nothing to, they wouldn't put him on a different schedule. They offered me a midnight shift. I'm like, I'm not taking a midnight shift. That totally fucks with your life, right? That's not fair. I didn't do the damage. He did. He can't keep his hands from me, right? And married man. This is a married man. And so, and I was single, so I guess I'm trouble and he's married, so that makes him more loyal and reliable and safe, whatever. So it got to the point where they would not keep me safe, and they would not keep him from me. They would not move him to the shift, and I saw that he was doing the same thing that he was doing before. He was in my space. We had a 6-foot distance that was regulated, and he was not to bypass that, and he was doing that. He did it twice in one day. He snuck behind me, and it wasn't until I looked over to realize that was him, and he was within like touching distance and like brushing up against me distance, right? Where he had alter routes he could have done. He could have called out, allowed me to move. He felt it was his space. He was entitled. He didn't have to do that. And so that's when I realized he's just going to do this again. And when I brought it up to them and how they handled it the same way, and they did not do an investigation. They just wanted to know what I was talking about. And right away when I told them, HR was like, well, I don't really see how, I'm like, dude, you're not even listening at this point. And so like, this is where I realized it wasn't matter what I was going to say, how much proof I had, how much evidence I have. They're never going to expect him to change, and he is never going to change, and he's going to keep touching me. So at that point, I had to leave that job, and I only had $1,500 in my account at the time, and I had my kids' RESPs, which was maybe about $2,000, and you can only remove so much what you put in. And it was at that time where that was where I was in my crazy-ass freeze state, and I had to acclimate myself because, like, all I had left was $1,500. Now, I did get approved for EI at that time, luckily, but it's only because I told them I have emails to prove my case. I have the interviews to prove how HR was messed up and biased. And they should have actually had someone outside of the building come in, because she was talking about how she knew Dave and he had touched her in comfort and she didn't see any issue with that. And so she already knew Dave on a personal level in some way. She should not have actually been in charge of this interview and investigation. And I was trying to tell that, explain that, and the production manager was not listening to me either. Nobody was listening. And then so my last, like, I had $1,000 where I had to pay for a lawyer to have a sit down with them. It's 500. It's 500, 450. 450 to pay. I round up sometimes. 450 or down. Just to sit with and before I thought these were supposed to be free, but even in that consultation, I realized they never looked at my videos. That's like the evidence. And so I thought that was off. And then, like, we're waiting around. I was waiting for them to do something. And then she's like, well, we haven't done anything because you haven't sent us your ID. And there was something else they needed from me. But I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that? I told you I'm under pressure and I already am struggling with finances. Like, I just come out of this environment. It makes sense that my memory is met. Like, if you don't understand how trauma, people who've experienced trauma behave, then you should not be in a lawyer position. If you have experience, you would understand, because you would be fighting for these situations, understanding the damage that it's caused. So if you can understand that my memory is like not great, I'm in a freeze state, I'm shutting down, I have very little energy. As a lawyer who deals with this on a regular, it doesn't seem like they had a lot of experience. And so I realized, like, I'd waited too long, waiting for them to get back to me, and I required my money back. They gave it back. I don't think they gave me my $450 back, but there was another deposit I had to put down. I think it was $1,000. That's what they refunded to me, but I still had to pay that $450. I never got that back. So in all, I had like $1,500. And then I was like, that was when I was like frozen. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so it took me a time, because like I did get approved for the stress leave. I had taken a previous stress leave in May because of this touching incident, and then I gone back into that workplace, and then this is my final exit where I was like, I can't go back. They're not changing anything. They're not listening. They're not taking my removal from that environment as a serious, like, we have to do something about this. And remember, I was 2 times some of these workers, and they didn't care about that either. You think they're going to lose you, because like I could see my value. I can see how I had a better work ethic than a lot of these people. My quality was extremely higher than a lot of them, and just my protocol, the way I show up at work and the way I offer ways to make things better, I'm like, I am higher in this way, in the quality of work that I provide, not in person, but in the work that I provide and how I work on myself. And I thought, would that not make them think twice about losing a worker like me? No, they couldn't see their value in me. That's what also gave me insight to other connections that I had where they could not see my value no matter what. And so then I'm working and now I'm at home on stress leave, and it was kind of like a continuation of the previous stress leave, which kind of sucks too because that had taken up some of my time. I think, from what I understand, like you get 52 weeks, and if it's just a continuation of that case, you still, like, I used up some of that as stress leave, and then I also had to carry on now that I'm actually off work. And so one of my caseworkers was trying to give me a hard time because he wanted to ask about like I had to, when I was, you know how you have to report every week or something or whatever. And the report that I had, it was saying like I'm not able, I had spoken with a caseworker telling them like, you can't make false accusations. And I told them like, I'm not able to actively look for work right now because I'm exhausted. So what I was doing was like, I was able to look for jobs, but I couldn't physically follow through on them because I was exhausted. I couldn't even do dishes at the time, let alone get myself put together and look for another job. So this is at the time where I finally had to realize I needed rest at this time. And this, because I had that conversation, I said, well, I had made a claim that I was looking for work, but in reality, I need to go back on stress leave because I don't have the physical energy or the mindset or the emotionality to even get myself back out there. And so what happened was he talked to another caseworker, and that caseworker was like, well, you made a false claim, so now we need doctor's notes from you to prove that you're too stressed out. Well, which is weird because fast forward, there was a time where I told him, okay, I can't afford a doctor's note in this situation. And that same caseworker at that time, this is after I did give him some doctor's notes, at that time he said, well, if you can't afford a doctor's note, then don't worry about it. So like, why was it so important over here for me to go and get those doctor's notes when I'm telling you the situation I've just been in that I have evidence for? This is a different person. I talked to like more of a manager position in regards to like why I was going to be approved for the EI, because I told her, I gave her all those details. This was a different lower guy who's like a caseworker where he's like, you know, like you need to provide a doctor's note to state this and this and that. But I'm like, well, I've already been approved for this. And he's like, well, no, you need this. And so like, it was crazy what I was going through. And then this man, and then just based on my, like the way he was very feminine in nature in his voice, and he just spoke very like he was interested in his same sex. He was also offering me his number, but not in a romantic interest, but in a way because he saw that potentially, he's like, well, here, if you, all of a sudden he was helpful, you know, and I'd been approved, I'd given my doctor's notes, and now that he knew I wasn't faking it or something, now all of a sudden he wanted to go on the other end and be all best friends. And I'm like, dude, you just put me through hell and back, now you want to be my savior? So that gave me some insight too about how people show up. And he wanted to give me his number, and I took it because I'm like, you know what, I just want to get off the phone, and I need him to be cooperative because I need this. And in reality, I shouldn't need that, because the reality is I was already approved and deserving. And this caseworker, who is angry at his own life, is taking it out on me in this power dynamic. And so those were times where I was really frozen, but like I needed to rest anyways. But so after I got approved, this is when I had to get out of that sort of freeze state and tell myself, you need rest. You don't need to be looking for a job. But like, it's scary because I was struggling with my bills when I was working at that job. When I was making $26, $27 an hour, I was already challenged with my bills. Like, I was still in debt. I still had renovations. I still, like, my basement is freezing cold where my bills are high because of it. Like, I had a lot going on. And here I'm also got the pressure of trying to build a channel, because I'm like, that's my side hustle. That was my dream to, like, if I could just keep this going and get it going, then I can make some money from that, maybe. Like, that's what has always been in the background. But I couldn't. I had to put that channel aside, and another distraction where I just had to rest from this because of not only like what I experienced all throughout the 2 years working at that Frunberg Knock, but with that, it wasn't just the guy who wouldn't stop touching me. It was also the coworkers there there was a bunch of mean girls and gossip girls, and like they were putting tags of my name on their bad work to make it look like I was doing a bad job to get me fired. And so I had to work harder. I had to be more aware. Like, that's exerting my energy. Wearing protective armor, metaphorically, is exhausting when you're amongst many predators who are trying to make you look bad and get you fired. And so that was a lot for me to, when I came out of that, then I had to like thaw out from that. And so that was a challenge because, like I said, now I'm getting EI, which is half my wage. And luckily at that time, I guess luckily, my daughter was having issues where she couldn't stay where she was because the landlord didn't know there was that many people living there. I guess from the girl that she was talking to who asked if she wanted to live with her, she hadn't indulged like how many people were living there. So they just wanted to split the bills, but the landlord said so many tenants were only allowed. So she needed a place to live. So then my daughter actually came home and she paid rent. Now she wasn't happy about the amount she paid rent, but at the same time, I'm like, you're living here. I want you to be responsible to cover your costs because the world is like that. And in reality, I couldn't cover all the costs on my own. And she was also, I had my car and she wanted access to the car. So I'm like, you're going to pay half for that. And I do think I gave her some deals in some ways, and I didn't make her pay for like property taxes and things like that. She was just, I was splitting the mortgage and the costs of like internet, hydro, and things like that. And then she would buy her own groceries. And then we were really good with our groceries. Like, it would always even out. We were really good with it. It was really nice living with my daughter in that regard. The one thing is like I was better at keeping the house clean. I felt like that. Like, it was more important to me because I knew how important my organization was to be for my business moving forward. And so, like, there were times when like I couldn't get to it, but like she would really leave it longer periods of time, which made me feel like she wasn't really, it wasn't important to her like it was to me. And so it got to a point where we just had different focuses at that time. So it got to a point where I did ask her to leave. Now this is when I was already working and I was taking a course online, and so I could cover my bills. And I thought it was important for her to learn these things because I talked to her a number of times, and she wasn't able to put herself in my shoes yet. And so the next time, so I had taken a year off, and then that's when I started working at Bully Bunches, and that was in April 1st, surprise, surprise. And that's when I got in that job where I was just seeing the same stuff happening, but like they'd only been around quite a bit. I think they've been around for 2 years, and the place I came from was like, I think they had their 75th anniversary or something like that. So like a well-established business with lots of different locations. Like I think they probably have 50 locations, and this one they only had the two, one in Ontario, one in BC. And so it's there where I experienced a number of things with not just my coworkers, but with the boss who was not able to see and be preventative and protect his employees. And so I'll go into a video about that, but this is more about shock and money. And so it got to the point where I realized there was a man who was stalking me. I stood up for myself. I dealt with it, but the boss said, well, if you can't prove that he was stalking you, you either have to come up with proof. And he didn't say this, but it's insinuated, like, you need to prove. Like, you need a police report because the accusation you're making is considered false unless you have a police report to prove that he was stalking you. And so I didn't have the proof. And so for me, it wasn't in the conversation, but it's insinuated like I'm either apologizing and retracting that, or I'm leaving. And I know that man was stalking me. I'm not saying I felt he was dangerous at the time quite yet, but that is highly inappropriate. And for the conversation I had with that man was like, you need to stop doing this. And he wasn't realizing that he's doing it. So then I said, well, then I'm just going to keep my distance from you. We're not going to, kiki it up at work. It's just work talk, and that's it. And that's where I took it with that man. And so because my boss needed that evidence and I couldn't, there's a story about that previously if you want to get the details on that. But what happened was I had to leave. And but I also knew, because that wasn't just a first instance with my boss. There's a number of things that he had done where I'm like, this man does not know what he's doing to be a boss or a leader. He's a great boss, but he's a horrible leader. He doesn't have life experience, and he doesn't have insight or self-awareness, and he just doesn't. So I'm like, all these things happening. This was like the last straw, kind of like at the other workplace, where it was my last straw, where like I took a time out. I thought I recovered myself. I gave myself some rest. And I went back into the building, hoping, like, by me taking some time out, hoping that the workplace had taken this seriously and taken some time out, realizing they didn't think they did anything wrong. They were seeing me as the trouble. And that's in this workplace, this man also saw me as the trouble. You know, I was ruffling feathers. I was calling his shit out. He didn't like that. It made him feel some sort of small way. And so, yeah. So that's when I had to leave. And this is where I was still in school, but I had dropped off my course. Actually, no, I wasn't in school. Sorry. I had to quit my course because with the situation that happened there at work with the lady, and from that other experience at work, I realized I was in no place to retain the information under this sort of amount of stress, and my nervous system was on the fritz. Everything was just too much. And so when I felt like, I went in after I couldn't get a police report, which makes sense because of, if you look into the details in that previous video, like, and so I went in and I told him I'm leaving, and I got my stuff and I left. So now I'm kind of like, I knew I couldn't stay here, but I'm like, what am I going to do moving forward? And so I wasn't going to get EI because I knew he's just going to lie and say I left, when in reality, like, I had to leave under the circumstances. I couldn't stay because, for one, he was unsafe as a boss and he couldn't protect me as an employee, but also, like, he's not understanding. He has a real lack of understanding in life about how manipulation, abuse, and all that shows up, and he has it within himself, right? And so I had to look in Ontario Works. Because I was like, my bills were building up, and I didn't know how I was going to pay them. And so what happened then was, like, also remember, like, I'm like, I can't get back into the game. My nervous system is shot. I am exhausted. I can't focus. I can't keep memory. And I noticed those signs in those environments as well. So it's important to remember that. And so what happened was, they said in order to get Ontario Works, you have to apply to EI and either get denied or what have you. You have to say that's been you've used that asset, and if it's not available to you, then that's what it is. And so I then had to go, and it was just like a whole case. The EI worker was just as bad as the constable, which was just as bad as my boss, which is just as bad as my EI guy. Honestly, like, they just lack of understanding of how abuse shows up and how it's like. And so I didn't even feel like fighting. As like, I could already tell. I already knew. Like, I didn't have the evidence this time like I did in the other place. And the other place, when I had the evidence, that lady actually seemed very compassionate and understanding. Like, it's almost like when I asked her, like, do you need a DC? She's like, no, I believe you. Like, it's almost like she could understand. Weird, right? But this guy, he was just like, oh, so arrogant. It's another dude. I'm not saying it's all dudes, but it's not always a dude either, because so I finally did get approved because they denied it, and I applied to Ontario Works, and that's where you get $733 a month until you start making $733 a month. And my caseworker there, she was just as bad. So I went in and I told her about the situation, and during this whole time, my bills are like, are going into overdraft, and I have an overdraft of $500. So I don't know how this is happening, to be quite honest. I didn't know that was possible, and I'm trying to think what else was happening. I think that's all. Oh, my daughter, I don't think she was there at that time either. I don't know if she was there at that time either. Trying to think. She left in May, I think, and I was out. Yeah, she wouldn't have been there because this is October. Is it? I'm trying to think. I don't think my daughter was in the house at that time. She might have been. I'll have to double check on that. But no, I don't think she was. I don't think she was, because on Ontario Works, like, you can only have a certain amount of income, and I would have had to count her income, and I wasn't receiving that. So she was already out at her new place by then. Okay, so, yeah, because I had asked her to leave in August. I think she left in August, and I worked until October at this place, and then that's when this happened. And so October 3rd is when I left, and so, like, my bills are accumulating, and I'm talking to this girl. I'd already applied to while I was in this workplace, because after I withdrew from school, I didn't have that living expense that they would give you. So I'm like, how am I going to pay my bills? I knew I couldn't pay my bills. I'd asked this boss for extra hours, like full-time hours, and he denied it out of favoritism. He gave it to another worker who asked for a week in the same week on the Friday, but he denied me on the Monday. And so it's interesting because like as soon as she needed it, all of a sudden I was allowed to have it, which is weird. And then, so I wasn't, and I was also acting the shipping manager at this time. And so we had a shipping manager before, but she got fired with 3 other girls because they're all friends. I don't know what happened, but, and so even though I was part-time, he's like, well, you're part-time, so I can't offer you this position because you're only part-time. So like now that I'm looking for full-time hours and I'm still doing the shipping job, he would not give me that. He didn't offer me that manager position or full-time hours. So this is financial abuse. I'm doing the job. I'm going above and beyond more than what the old shipping manager was doing, and I'm doubling rates, and you're still not willing to pay me. So these are all things that were adding up. And when that predator thing hit, I left. So then I'm not doing EI. I'm getting on Ontario Works, and that lady then is like really friendly at first, but then she's giving weird advice. Like I'm talking to her, she's like, you could potentially lose your house. Like you got to get back into work, right? And I'm telling her, like, I'm exhausted and I'm like just so depressed and I'm dealing with a lot of heavy stuff right now. And she's like, well, maybe you should consider taking antidepressants, which is a weird suggestion to come from someone who is not a doctor. And to be honest, it's weird to come from a doctor, but like this is outside of your area and you should definitely not be suggesting drugs. She did suggest a therapist who she said was, I said, well, I don't really want someone local because like it's a very religious community. She's like, oh, this girl's not like that. Well, I realized later after I'd been working with the therapist that she was highly religious, and she actually trained at a Christian college or university. I'm not sure what it was, but it was Christian based. So I'm like, how is that not religious? And so that was another horrible suggestion from this woman. But then also I had talked to her on my second sit down with her, because you got to check in, you got to keep them updated. And their second sit down, I said, okay, I've gotten some leeway, because she's like, keep me updated on what's going on. She seemed really friendly, of course, and she wanted to help. And I told her, like, I've gotten to the point where I talked to my bank and I can get a payout from my locked in RSP, which I didn't know that was possible. And so she was like, okay, that's great. So like, you're going to have to pay back December's amount, because when you get that payment, because I told her like I'd already done it. It's just a waiting, to get it approved and through the system. And like, because it's an application. And so she's like, oh, you're going to have to pay that. And so like, obviously that's at above 10,000. So you can't reapply until you get, less than 10,000. I told her, well, it's going to be back down to 10,000 because I have to pay back my property taxes. I have an overdraft in my bank account that was up to like, I don't know how much, is in the thousands. And I had bills that were backdated. And so like by the time I paid off all my things, then now I think I would be back in that range of, I think it was like I had $7,000 left. I think that's how it worked. And so she was like, fine, this is great. This is all wonderful. But in the new year, that's when she started saying, I don't know if you're allowed, she used that word allowed. That was a weird thing. If you're allowed to be receiving benefits, even if you have less than 10,000 in your account, because you still have this locked in RSP. And I said, well, it was fine before, and I told you it was locked in before, and I told you that I was withdrawing from it. So why was it okay then, but now it's not? And I needed her to explain that, and she couldn't explain that. And so I talked to her supervisor, and her supervisor was backing what she was saying. And I remember when in November, I dealt with somebody else before then and talked to someone in St. Thomas. And so at this time, that person, I told her, like, I've been applying, but I keep getting denied. And she said, well, it's because you have to apply at the beginning of each month. And so it was at the middle of November at this time where I didn't know that. Because I wasn't getting called back by my other caseworker that is supposed to respond to the phone calls. I left messages, and he hadn't responded either. And so when I talked to this lady, she's like, well, we can't. The one lady, had said, well, you can appeal that. But when I talked to this one caseworker in town, she's like, well, you can't appeal that. It's not our fault that you didn't know how the system works. And I thought that was a weird response. Because like, you know, the idea is like, if I'm not making money during this month, then I'm entitled to get paid for that month, and that's hence the appeal, right? So, and I told her, like, it's like these people are treating me like criminals. And while I understand, like, people take advantage of the system, like, I think she could see that I wasn't taking advantage of the system. And so, because I was out front, I'm like, I'm literally telling you, I'm withdrawing from locked in RSPs. And I was very upfront. I was showing everything. I was showing her screenshots. I handed her my phone to look through my RBC online. Like, which that was, I don't even think she has a right for that. But so then, like, her when I was talking to her supervisor, I'm like, I need you to explain this because I'm getting confused and conflicted. And so, like, she's over explaining, and she's like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And so I finally, because I'm like, well, why was it okay here and not here? Why was she saying it's okay here but not here? And so, like, what changed? I needed to know what changed, because it felt like the goalpost was being moved on me, and that's what I felt. And so, like, I needed an explanation, and I'm so like, why is she saying okay, it's okay when it wasn't okay then? And what has changed her mind during that process? And that's what I was requiring from the supervisor. And we were kept butting heads, and I was looking for answers, and she couldn't give me answers. So I said, give me someone higher. And so she gives me somebody else, a third party, who is going to look in on this. And when she looked in on it, she said, you shouldn't have been denied. She's like, you, because of your locked in RSPs, we're not allowed to count those as income. Even though you can access them, it's not considered your income based as the 10,000 minimum or maximum amount, right? And that's what they're trying to tell me. It's very confusing. A lot was going on. I was getting a lot of different answers. And it was when I started recording the supervisor and this new third party, because I was like so sick of all this gaslighting and confusion going on, right? And so then I got approved, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And now this is the whole time while I'm trying to rest my nervous system after everything that I've been through, that I'm still experiencing while I'm trying to rest my nervous system and thaw out. I'm dealing with all these situations along the way. And so if I would have been able to just rest and relax, you know how much easier that would have been? But I did gain a lot of insight, which is important, and I'm still observing during this whole time. And so now I feel a little bit more lack of pressure, because now I know I can access those locked in RSPs when I need them. But it's still, there's still a cap. Like, you can't just take what you want. There's like a percentage of like a maximum amount. Like, they have a number, and then you can only take a percentage of that number. So the maximum amount, I think, was like, I think I could take out, I think it's like 33,000 or something. But you got to understand, when you get that 33,000, it's taxed when you get it. And then you have to pay taxes at the end of the year for that as well. So 2 tax times. And now the banker said, because you've been taxed twice, you might get a higher refund at tax time because you've been taxed twice. I don't know the details of that, but I did get a tax return. And remember, at this time, I was also getting notices where I was about to lose my house because I couldn't pay my property taxes over this whole period of time, because of what I've been experiencing about with the financial abuse and the haters and the predators and all this stuff. So, like, I'm going without, I'm not, like, everything is happening all at once. And so I finally got to the point where, okay, so I can finally breathe a little bit, and now I can somewhat understand, like, okay, so like I have some movement, but I still like don't have a job. Like, I still don't have consistent income, and the amount that I'm getting is not stretching. And the thing is, I can go back into the Ontario Works once my withdrawal that I have, once it's under 10,000, then I can start getting paid again. And what I thought I could do is just use it as like a supplement along with the 730, which is not. And she told me that you can't do that. Like, if you have too much, you can't do that. But I said, okay, so I'm just gonna, once I get to under 10,000, I'll call you, and then I can start with the Ontario Works again. And that's when my first caseworker was like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't receive this while you still have that. And so it even states on their website, like, you're not required to remove or withdraw your locked in RSPs, even if they're withdrawable, I guess. Like, it's the language is very confusing. And so then it got to the point where it would get so low that I'm like so now I'm like not getting anything at all. So like, or not anything at all, but it got to the point where I ran out of my RSPs, and then I'm just living on Ontario Works money, right? And so like that's where we have a community kitchen here. So like I'm like, okay, everyone has access to the community kitchen, so I can go there too. I'm struggling with finances, I'm struggling with addictions, and I'm struggling with abuse. So like that's me too. I'm one of those people that need to go there. But then I also realized, unfortunately, like there are predators in that area too. There were men that were approaching me romantically, and like, which is weird because I'm here to get food. I'm not interested in a relationship. And like calling me stunning is such a weird way to respond to someone when you're there to get food. Like I can understand if you're trying to like be positive and give someone a compliment, but stunning is not a compliment, that is a love bomb. And so stuff like that was happening. There were men there that were like sitting at my table and approaching me, and it almost seemed like they're there to get supply from other people, like time and attention of other people. And I just thought that was weird. I also felt like I didn't have permission to tell him no, not to sit with me, because it's not my home. It's not my, this is a public place. Everyone is allowed. That's not my chair. That's not my table. This is not my food. So it really felt like I couldn't say no when I wanted to say no. And I was also concerned because like the people that were running the show cannot recognize the predators in the room. And then I also recognize there's some predatory people, manipulators, and narcissistic types that were actually in it. And that was a whole new level where I'm like, okay, this person is actually one of the top people, and they are biased towards me, trying to make it hard for me to receive support and trying to make me feel isolated. And they were ignoring me intentionally when I would walk right by them. And I could see that they're offering up friendly faces to other people, and you know, going out of the way to people who are farther from them to say hello. And like the fact that I'm right here and you're ignoring me, and they could not say my name, they would not look me in the eye, and they would refer to me as hey when I could hear them using other people's names and making strong eye contact and being friendly. And so that was in that space too. So it made it really hard for me to go there for support because of those things too. And support I did get unconditionally was over at the corner cupboard. I did have a lot of success there where people were just giving, and without, I almost felt bad at times, but they were just so kind and they didn't want me to feel bad. They, you know, they were understanding. So yeah, so like, and during all this time, I don't know how my bills are going to get paid. So I'm just like, kind of like, these are where I've had a lot of trust falls, where I'm just like, I don't know what I have access to, and I don't know what I don't have access to. And so there are times when I realize like this is the time where I realize I could get a pause on my mortgage withdrawals. So you can get a month where it doesn't matter how many payments you have during the month. That full month is, you can move those payments to the end of your mortgage, which is not great, but in the time it's helpful, and it helped me. And then there's also an opportunity, which I've done, is where you can actually get your mortgage payments paused for like a monthly time. And now I think that is limited, because when I talked to my banker, she's like, you can do that, but you can't, you might not, like, I've done that, I think I did that twice. And she's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this another time, kind of thing, right? So there. And so that's where I'm at there financially. And currently, I am looking for a job. I just noticed that I did not get it. And so that's going to put me, so like, here's the thing, the whole process through this money really started me at where it would freeze me. And it would stop me from doing anything. And so during this whole process, I've gotten through it where I can actually still do stuff. I can still make videos. I can still spend time on my house. I can still rest. When normally I would jump back in there and I would be like right back into the work. But I know from my extremes that I am overworked and I need rest. And so I have to step into that rest, even when the money is not showing up. Has been one of those challenging times. And especially when, you know, when you're down and out, this is where those people, remember we talked about those people that of choice? This is when they choose who they want to support and who they don't, and they look for vulnerable people, and they consider me vulnerable because I'm on my own. I'm a single woman. I'm a single parent. I am struggling financially. You can see the effects of a lack of finances around my home. You can see that when I'm doing something, I don't have the money. I have to use what I have for the most part. And so people see this, they recognize this, and they see it as a chance, like a vulture, to get their supply, to not only knock you down, because they also can see that you're doing something that they can't do, and they don't know that that's part of becoming independent. They just don't like it. I feel like it's kind of like a trigger where they don't know why they're triggered, but it's just being triggered. But they are very aware of their actions, and they are in control of it because they treat me differently than they treat other people. And the people that treated me different have supposedly experienced some of the abuse that I have been in. So these girlies should have been supporting me, and they weren't, because they've been through the same things that I have been. And so it's interesting when you see women like that, and this is where it's not all men and it's not all women, but it is men and it is women, because it's like the people that are in these social services that are meant to be supporting you and everyone without a bias and just based on protocol, they're bypassing the protocol, and they're using loopholes and manipulation and fear tactics in order for you, who is already in a low place, to make you lower, because they can see something, they sense something, but they also see that you were down and out, and this is what they do. So I am not the only one, I am not the first one, and I will not be the last one that these people do this to. And so that's why I talk to it in such a degree. And as I get better, I'm going to get, more clear with what's going on, and I'll be able to name names. But until then, this is my story. And I had to learn how to keep moving when I couldn't see the money. And it's just because I've experienced this so many times that I just had to. And it's almost like, what's the point of worrying about something I can't control? I can't control this. And like I said, I'm just living my life, and I don't know when my mortgage will get paid and if I can pay it or how that's going to show up. But at the same time, I'm like, well, this is my one life to live. And so if I do have to sell my home and move into an apartment, then I'd rather enjoy my home as long as I can and try to make the most out of this situation. And I have considered selling my house, but moving into an apartment, but I feel like this is bullshit, and I'm standing my ground, and these people want me out. And so I'm going to stay. And I'm going to hold my line, because normally I run and I sell my house and I don't know how to make money. So I'm learning how to make money. I'm holding my ground. I don't know what this looks like. I still am probably going to apply to some jobs if I feel like it might be more beneficial, because my bills are outside of what these jobs are starting at mostly. So I have to look at how can I revise my bills. Maybe I have to sell my car. I don't know. These are the things I have to look at. And while I revise myself and simplify my life, it also is allowing me to do and live the life that I want. And so it's just removing some things that I actually don't need. I like to have a car. I don't need a car. If I'm working from home, I don't need that car. So that's where I'm like, I can just sell that. Now, I've looked at the details around selling that, and that can be complicated, so I'm hoping that's going to work out for me. But this is just how I've been working and moving through this. And I am coming up to another trust fall. I don't know what this is going to look like. I have some ideas based on my previous experiences, and I just have to hope that it works and that I just keep doing what I'm doing. And it's pushing me to put myself out there even more and offer services that I once felt like maybe I was too tired to do. But I think, as I've worked on my health, and I think I've gotten to a point also with my health where I'm going to be getting consistent results, that is helping me too. And so I think by constantly working all these things, as I've been pushing forward and refusing to stop, I do think I'm coming to a place where I'm going to get some answers and some growth. And if not, at least I can say I didn't give up. If I still have to sell my house, at least I tried. I didn't just give in. I didn't step down. I didn't lay down. I fought for it. And there were times when I couldn't fight for it. And my son said, keep fighting. That was really hard, because sometimes someone's telling you to do something and you're like, I'm just so tired. And it's really hard when you're just so tired and someone tells you to keep fighting and they don't realize how long you've been fighting for previously. And that's not my son's fault. That's not my daughter's fault. Like when they don't have an understanding of where I've been and what I've been through, that just makes sense to them because they can still do that in their mind. But for me, I fought and fought and fought. And so there's times where I just had to stop fighting and I just had to rest and sit back. And that has allowed me, by allowing myself to rest during these chaotic times, it's allowed me to find ways to recover myself so that I can continue on. But there were some times where I had to say, I can't do this. I can't fight. And in those work environments, I couldn't keep, like the lawyers, I spoke to 3 lawyers. None of them seemed interested in any sort of justice. They were saying I was going to get $25,000 maybe. And this is fighting against these big companies. And then even in the second work environment, I'm like, I didn't keep the receipts. I didn't record. I was just so tired by the time. And there's some times where you just have to focus on I had to focus on myself and trying to get myself back up. And by being able to get back up, I had to stay down. And so during these times, I had to stay down. I couldn't share my receipts. I couldn't record. I couldn't, you know, I know what I know because of this though, so it's not like I've just forgotten everything. I have it up in my mind. I use this to apply as a template to other people. I've learned how people show up and how they don't. I've learned that I can't trust everybody, and just because you're offering help or in a social service that you're not there with always good intentions. Like I did learn a lot, and so that is invaluable. That does have a value to it, and I'm just hoping that I can find the place where I can meet someone else who sees the value in what I've experienced. So yeah, I've been doing some story times just to try to give you some backstory on where I've been and how I accumulated all this stuff that I do feel like a lot of people don't have. And a lot of people haven't pushed themselves past this line. And I pushed myself past that line. And that's the benefits I got from it. And I don't know what this is looking like this time around. I really don't. I've gotten some more areas of where I can find ways to manage my bills until January, but until then, I really don't know what that looks like. And so I'll let you know what I know. So thank you for watching. There are ways to donate financially if you're comfortable and capable. It's not expected. Oops. It's not expected my battery is low, but it is muchly appreciated, especially at this time, during this time, and until January. Anytime between then would be great. If you can give and you plan on giving during these times between now and January, I would love that. I could really appreciate that. And you can subscribe. That's going to help my algorithm. If I can get subscribers enough to even get super chats or whatever things through the app. Get myself some subscribers so I start getting paid for my videos. Any of those things would be helpful for me. So if you don't have it in your own pocket, you can help me here on my platform, and I would appreciate all of that. So thank you for watching. I know this was a long one, but I'm getting some short ones in there too. I've heard you, I received you, and so I'm doing a little bit of both. So thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. I hope this does help. Take care.